The red light on the camera blinked once, then locked into a solid glow. They were live. The WBTN Studios in Dallas, Texas buzzed under the surface. To an outsider, it might have seemed like any other primetime political broadcast. Clean desk, glossy backdrop of an American flag, professionally lit faces. But underneath the polished facade, the air was tight, nearly suffocating. Tonight's panel was marketed as a civil dialogue on race relations in America, but everyone inside the studio knew it was a powder keg with a lit fuse. The moderator, veteran anchor Todd Simms, shifted nervously in his seat, palms sweaty against his note cards. He glanced from one guest to the other, sensing the danger. On the right side of the desk sat Karoline Leavitt, crisp in a navy blazer, blonde hair perfectly curled, posture radiating the kind of confidence born from privilege. She adjusted her microphone and smiled. A politician's smile, tight and rehearsed. Across from her sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, poised, calm, wearing a deep green dress that contrasted sharply with the sterile set. Her demeanor was cool, almost detached, but her dark eyes burned with focus. She sipped water slowly, waiting. The topic tonight wasn't generic talking points about taxes or immigration. No. Tonight was about race, justice, and who gets to claim America as theirs. "Good evening, America," Todd said, forcing cheer into his voice. "Tonight we ask, is America moving forward or are we more divided than ever?" Joining me, former White House aide Karoline Leavitt and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Let's dive in. The first few minutes passed like a slow dance around a live wire. Todd tossed soft questions about unity and civil discourse. Karoline answered with canned phrases about opportunity for all. Jasmine responded with guarded realism about systemic barriers. But beneath the polite sparring, something darker churned. The audience in the studio, hand-picked for their diversity of views, leaned forward in their seats. Phones buzzed quietly under chairs. Producers watched the social media feeds, ready to pump out clips the second sparks flew. They wouldn't have to wait long. Todd shuffled his cards, pretending to glance casually at his notes. In reality, he was stalling, heart hammering. The network had pushed him to go there tonight, to poke the bear just enough to get ratings without causing a lawsuit. He turned to Karoline with a glint in his eye. "Karoline, you've often spoken about how Americans should be grateful for the opportunities this country provides," he began smoothly. "Some critics say that's dismissive of the systemic challenges minorities face. How do you respond?" Karoline flashed her perfect teeth in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Todd, I think too many people in this country have been taught to see themselves as victims," she said, voice syrupy sweet. "We live in the greatest nation on earth. If you don't like it here, there are plenty of other places you can go." There it was, the first spark. The studio tensed. Jasmine didn't react yet. She just adjusted the papers in front of her, slow and deliberate. Todd nodded, sensing the friction. "Congresswoman Crockett, your response." Jasmine leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with Karoline. "Being critical of injustice isn't being ungrateful, it's being American." Karoline smirked. "With all due respect," she said, and the phrase dripped with condescension. "Maybe if some people focused more on building and less on complaining, they'd get further." Todd's eyebrows twitched. He knew they were teetering on the edge. Karoline, emboldened by the lack of immediate outrage, leaned in for the kill. "If you think America is so bad," she said, voice rising just enough to cut through the air, "maybe you should just go back to Africa." The word slammed into the room like a bomb. Silence. For a fraction of a second, no one moved. Even the hum of the studio lights seemed to fade. Todd's mouth opened slightly as if to intervene, but no words came out. Jasmine froze, her hands resting gently on the table, her spine straightening inch by inch. Viewers at home leaned closer to their screens. The moment had come, and nothing would ever be the same again. A low, disbelieving murmur rippled through the studio. The control room exploded into chaos, producers shouting over each other, hands flying to earpieces, directors barking at camera operators to "Stay on Crockett! Stay on Crockett!" Jasmine Crockett sat motionless, but it was not the stillness of shock. It was the terrifying calm before a storm. Karoline, sensing the weight of what she'd just said, but too proud to walk it back, offered a half smirk, half shrug, as if daring anyone to call her out. Her cheeks flushed, whether from adrenaline or awareness, no one could tell. Todd Simms fumbled with his notes, desperate for a lifeline, any way to redirect. But it was too late. Jasmine shifted slightly in her chair, her movements slow, deliberate, powerful. She lifted her gaze to Karoline, not with anger, but with something colder, sharper, pity. She adjusted her microphone, and when she finally spoke, her voice was a scalpel. "Go back to Africa," Jasmine repeated, each word precise, slicing through the heavy air. "The oldest, laziest insult hurled at black Americans for generations." She leaned forward, hands clasped lightly on the desk, looking almost serene. "My ancestors built this country while yours watched. We bled, we toiled, we rose. This country doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us. And we earned our place in it the hard way." The camera zoomed in, catching the steel in her eyes. "I don't need to go back anywhere," Jasmine continued, her voice gaining quiet force. "I'm already home." For a moment, no one in the studio breathed, and then, like a floodgate bursting open, reactions poured in. On Twitter, "Did Karoline really just say that on national TV? #GoBackCaroline, #Jasmine Crockett." On TikTok, clips of the exchange exploded across For You pages within minutes. In living rooms across America, families gasped, cursed, or cheered, depending on who was watching. Todd Simms tried to intervene. Let's remember to keep this conversation respectful." Jasmine didn't even blink. "Respect," she said coolly, "is earned, Mr. Simms, not demanded." Karoline swallowed hard. The smirk was gone now, replaced with a thin-lipped grimace. But the damage had already been done, and the world was watching. The silence that followed was not peace. It was the kind of silence that falls before a courtroom verdict. Jasmine let it stretch, let the discomfort settle deep into the bones of everyone in the room. She wasn't rushing to save Karoline. She wasn't rushing to make Todd feel better. She owned the silence. When she finally spoke again, her words landed like hammer strikes. "Do you know," she said, her voice steady, "how many times someone has told a black American to go back to Africa while standing on stolen land?" Karoline flinched slightly, almost imperceptibly. But the cameras caught it. Jasmine continued, her tone now tinged with sadness, not rage. "Every generation we are told we don't belong. Every time we demand equality, we're told we're the problem. But we have built, we have fought, we have bled, and still we rise." The studio lights seemed harsher now, the cameras closer, the air heavier. "I don't hate this country," Jasmine said. "I love it enough to demand it live up to its promises." Karoline opened her mouth, but Jasmine cut her off with a raised hand, not rude, just firm. "You told me to go back to Africa." She let the words linger again. "I tell you, grow up." A collective gasp sucked the oxygen out of the room. Somewhere backstage, a producer cursed under their breath, knowing this moment would loop on cable news for weeks. The live chat streams on YouTube and Facebook went wild. Emojis flooded the screens. Hashtags surged. #Jasmine strikes back. #not going anywhere. #truth hurts. Jasmine leaned back slightly, her posture regal, almost untouchable. Todd Simms cleared his throat, trying to summon his authority as moderator. "Maybe we should take a short break." "No," Jasmine said softly but firmly. "Let's finish what we started." She wasn't just responding anymore. She was taking command. Across America, millions of viewers leaned in, sensing that they were not just witnessing a debate. They were witnessing a reckoning. The control room was in chaos. "Keep the feed rolling," someone barked. "Don't cut to commercial. This is ratings gold." In the studio, the atmosphere was molten. Phones buzzed and vibrated violently under chairs, under tables, in staff members' pockets. Notifications flooded in faster than anyone could read them. #GoBackCaroline was trending #1 on Twitter within 5 minutes. Clips of Caroline's "Go Back to Africa" comment were already circulating TikTok, overlaid with flashing headlines and rage-fueled captions. At News Junkie Girl, "Did she really just say that, Liv?" #Jasmine Crockett. At Justice for All, "This is why we need people like Jasmine speaking truth." At Patriot 1776, "Freedom of speech. She said nothing wrong." The country was splitting in real time. Inside the studio, Todd Simms clutched his cards like a drowning man gripping a life preserver. "Congresswoman," he said, voice strained, "you've made your position clear. Karoline, would you like to respond?" Karoline opened her mouth, but the words stumbled out, brittle and defensive. "I didn't mean it like that. It was... I mean, this is being taken out of context." The audience wasn't buying it. Soft gasps, a low hiss from somewhere in the back rows. Jasmine remained composed, hands folded neatly in front of her. She tilted her head as if studying Karoline the way a teacher studies a failing student. "Words have power," Jasmine said calmly, "and yours just showed exactly who you are." Todd made a frantic gesture toward the producers. "Commercial break? Cut the feed? Stay, Liv?" The answer came back fast. "Stay, Liv. Ratings are spiking." Karoline's smile faltered. She tapped her pen nervously against the desk, her polished TV armor cracking under the pressure. Meanwhile, the tweets kept flooding in. "Karoline Leavitt just buried her career live on TV. Jasmine Crockett == American hero. This is why representation matters." Todd's earpiece crackled with updates, but he couldn't process any of it. All he could do was brace for impact. The night was just getting started. Karoline tried to recover. She straightened in her chair, forced a tight smile, and leaned into the microphone. "Look, I'm just saying that if someone hates this country, they have the freedom to leave. That's what makes America great. Freedom." It was too late. The camera zoomed in, catching the slight tremble of her lower lip, the sheen of sweat beginning to gather at her hairline. Jasmine didn't even need to speak. Her silence was a verdict. Across the country, viewers were watching, some stunned into silence, others nodding fiercely, others shouting at their TVs. Karoline plowed on, sensing she was losing the room. "We need to get back to unity," she said desperately. "We need to stop tearing each other down." Todd tried to help, tossing a softball question. "What does unity mean to you, Karoline?" "It means," Karoline stammered, "it means we need to respect our institutions and stop blaming America for everything." Jasmine finally leaned in. "Respect," she said, voice low, "is a two-way street, and tonight you chose the wrong direction." Karoline's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. In the audience, someone coughed loudly, the sound sharp and disapproving. Another muffled "Amen," barely audible but caught by the sensitive studio mics. Karoline tapped her pen again, and again, and again, a rapid, anxious beat. A close-up shot caught her shifting in her seat, blinking rapidly, her carefully painted-on confidence sliding off like melting wax. The moderators backstage debated cutting the feed to a technical difficulties screen, but the numbers climbing across YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter said one thing: "Don't move. Let it burn." Karoline stumbled over her next sentence. I didn't mean to offend anyone." "Intent doesn't erase impact," Jasmine said. It was a masterclass in control. Jasmine wasn't raising her voice. She wasn't gesturing wildly. She was calm, unflinching, devastating. Karoline's breathing quickened, her chest rising and falling faster. She was unraveling. And America was watching it happen in real time. The audience could only hold back for so long. It started with a few restless movements, feet tapping, uncomfortable shifting in seats. Then a few low murmurs, barely restrained. Finally, the dam broke. Someone near the middle rows said it first, a voice too loud to ignore. "Shame!" A ripple of agreement followed, some murmuring, some nodding. The cameras weren't supposed to show the audience, but a rogue cameraman panned across the room anyway, catching furious faces, people whispering behind cupped hands. Karoline froze. The audience was supposed to be neutral, carefully screened for balance. But the anger was palpable now, like a current in the air. Todd Simms coughed nervously into his mic. "Let's remember," he stammered, "we're here to discuss ideas, not racism," someone called out. A small smattering of applause, brief but electric. Karoline tried to recover, her voice brittle. "I'm not a racist! I love this country! Love isn't enough when it's blind!" Another voice cut through. The audience was slipping from control, and viewers at home were riveted. Live stream comments flooded in. "You can't walk back what you said, Karoline." "Jasmine keeping her cool while Karoline melts down is everything." #not going anywhere trending now. Jasmine sat perfectly still, not gloating, not smirking, just watching. A queen amid the wreckage. Karoline glanced desperately at Todd, at the producers off stage, at anyone. But no help was coming. In politics, once you lose the room, you lose everything. Tonight, Karoline Leavitt had lost America. Jasmine Crockett took a deep breath, her hands folded neatly on the desk. "You want to talk about real grievances?" she said, her voice rising just enough to fill the studio without shouting. "Let's talk about them." Karoline flinched, as if bracing for impact. Jasmine turned slightly in her chair, addressing the viewers beyond the cameras. "Let's talk about Trayvon Martin. Let's talk about Breonna Taylor. Let's talk about the countless mothers who bury their children while being told to be grateful." Each name was a blow. Each name a scar torn open live on air. "Let's talk," Jasmine continued, "about the veterans who fought and died for this country, only to come home and be told they don't belong." Karoline pressed her lips into a thin line, her eyes darting back and forth, searching for a foothold she couldn't find. The moderator shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Jasmine pressed on, voice gaining momentum. "Let's talk about the high school valedictorian deported because of a paperwork mistake. The black teenager jailed for stealing a sandwich while billionaires steal billions." The weight of it pressed down on the studio. Some in the audience wiped away silent tears. Even Todd's voice cracked when he finally asked, "Congresswoman Crockett, what do you hope people take from this?" Jasmine turned back to him, her eyes fierce and unwavering. "That being uncomfortable isn't the same as being oppressed. The truth doesn't need permission, and that America can't heal if it keeps pretending it isn't wounded." Karoline slumped slightly in her chair, the fight bleeding out of her. The camera zoomed in on Jasmine's face, unbothered, undeterred, unstoppable. Across the nation, phones buzzed, screens lit up, hearts pounded. Something seismic had shifted, and nothing, not spin, not apologies, not damage control, could put it back the way it was before. Karoline tried to steady herself. She clutched her pen so tightly that her knuckles turned white, desperately flipping through her notes as if some magic phrase could undo the damage. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked to Todd Simms, to the producers, to anyone who might offer her a lifeline. None came. The room tilted, not literally, but in the way a dream turns into a nightmare you can't wake from. She leaned into her mic one last time, voice trembling. I'm just trying to stand up for people who feel ignored," she said. It might have sounded noble, if not for the cracks in her voice, the desperate glint in her eyes, the beads of sweat running unchecked down her temple. Jasmine watched silently, offering no rescue. She didn't need to. Karoline was doing it to herself. "You feel ignored?" Jasmine finally said, voice low, deadly calm. "Imagine living every day knowing that your very existence is seen as a threat. Imagine having to prove you belong in your own country over and over, simply because of the color of your skin." Karoline visibly sagged in her chair, the fight bleeding out of her. Across the studio, the cameras captured it all. The trembling hands, the flushed face, the hollow eyes. At home, millions watched, mesmerized. One final moment sealed her fate. As Jasmine finished speaking, Karoline reached for her water, her hand missing the glass entirely. It toppled over, water spreading across the desk in a slow, mortifying puddle. The audience gasped softly. Todd half rose from his seat. Karoline's face turned a sickly shade of pale. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled slightly. She grabbed the edge of the table for support, knocking over her notes, and then she collapsed. Not a dramatic fall, not a fainting swoon, just a slow, helpless slump sideways, her body giving out under the weight of humiliation, pressure, and rage. The studio erupted into controlled chaos. Producers sprinted from the wings. Todd shouted for medics. The audience rose in a collective gasp. Jasmine sat frozen for a moment, then rose slowly, stepping back to give space. Camera operators scrambled to cut the feed, but not before millions saw it live. Karoline Leavitt, the firebrand, the fighter, crumpled and broken in front of the entire nation. The screen flickered to a technical difficulties message. But the damage was irreversible. The collapse had already escaped into the world. Within minutes, the internet was ablaze. Karoline Leavitt collapses after racist comment live. Jasmine Crockett stands tall while opponent falls. America watches as history is made on national TV. Clips of the collapse flooded TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube faster than producers could issue takedown notices. Hashtags trended globally. #Karoline collapse. #Jasmine's strikes. #Truth Hurts News outlets scrambled to frame the story, each according to their agenda. Conservative commentators cried, "Set up!" and liberal ambush. Liberal pundits hailed Jasmine as a truth teller and voice for a generation. Editorials poured out. Karoline Leavitt exposed the rot at the core of American exceptionalism. Jasmine Crockett proved that dignity can defeat bigotry. This wasn't a debate. It was a reckoning. Behind the scenes, Karoline's team went into damage control overdrive. A statement was released within hours. Miss Leavitt experienced a medical emergency unrelated to the heated discussion. No one was buying it. Memes exploded across social media. One viral image showed Karoline's collapse superimposed over the words, "When karma hits live." Jasmine, for her part, stayed silent. No victory laps, no gloating tweets. She let the truth and the footage speak for itself. But inside her private hotel room that night, Jasmine sat staring at her phone, messages and missed calls piling up. Some praising her bravery, others, the darker ones, threatening, seething. She knew tonight was only the beginning. A battle line had been drawn across America, and by morning, There would be no turning back. Jasmine Crockett sat in the dim light of her hotel room, still in the same dress she wore on live television hours earlier. The buzz of the outside world pressed against the walls, sirens, reporters, protesters, flashing cameras. But in here, it was just her and the deafening echo of her own heartbeat. The phone on the bedside table wouldn't stop buzzing. Every few seconds, another message, another missed call. Friends, family, strangers from around the country. She scrolled through a few texts. Proud of you. Stay strong. They're going to come after you harder now. Jasmine set the phone down with a sigh. A soft knock at the door. It's me, came the familiar voice of her chief of staff, Dana Rowe. Jasmine opened the door and let her in. Dana held 2 cups of coffee, one of them already half spilled from rushing. You okay? Dana asked, setting the cups down. Define okay, Jasmine said with a weak laugh. Dana gave her a long look. You changed something tonight. At what cost? Jasmine asked, barely above a whisper. Dana didn't answer immediately. The right cost, she said finally. The cost of telling the truth. Jasmine turned toward the window, staring at the sea of flashing lights below. She wasn't naive. She knew backlash was coming. She knew power structures didn't crumble without a fight. But for now, just for a moment, she allowed herself a sliver of pride. Tonight, she had stood tall, and no one could take that away. By sunrise, the battle lines were clear. Cable news anchors dissected the collapse from every angle. Was it a political assassination? A tragic misunderstanding? A long overdue reckoning? Opinion pieces flooded every major publication. Jasmine Crockett's calm exposed America's ugly truths. Karoline Leavitt's comment will haunt her career forever. Protests sprang up outside network headquarters in New York, Dallas, Atlanta. Some carried signs that read, "We're already home." Truth hurts. Respect is earned. Online, the debate raged. Some hailed Jasmine as a hero. Others painted her as an angry black woman trope, desperate to shift blame. It didn't matter. The footage was undeniable. The words had been said. The collapse had been witnessed. Karoline's PR team scrambled, releasing apology videos, interviews, tears carefully placed. But the damage was done. Sponsors pulled out of speaking engagements. Political allies distanced themselves quietly but swiftly. Meanwhile, Jasmine was invited to speak at universities, rallies, churches. She declined most of them. She didn't want to become a symbol. She just wanted the conversation to stay alive. 1 week later, Jasmine stood in front of a small community gathering in Dallas. No TV cameras, no makeup artists, just folding chairs, a squeaky mic, and families packed into a school gym. She cleared her throat and began. I'm not here tonight to talk about collapse, she said. I'm here to talk about standing. The audience leaned in. Standing when it's hard. Standing when your voice shakes. Standing when they tell you to sit down, be quiet, and smile. She let her gaze sweep the room. Old men with veteran caps, young mothers bouncing babies on their hips, teenagers recording on battered iPhones. Telling the truth will cost you something, Jasmine said, but silence costs even more. A murmur of agreement ran through the crowd. This isn't about me, she continued. It's about every kid who's been told they don't belong, every worker overlooked, every voter suppressed, every dream deferred. Applause broke out, soft at first, then louder, stronger. Jasmine smiled, a real one this time. They tried to break me on live television, she said, but what they don't understand is you can't break the truth. She stepped back from the mic. The applause carried her off the stage, into the waiting arms of her community. Outside, the world buzzed with noise, outrage, spin. But inside that gym, for one night. There was only one thing that mattered. The truth had been spoken, and the world would never be able to pretend it hadn't heard it.